June 12th, Hartford Board of School Directors meeting to order at 6:11. Are there any changes, additions to the agenda? No, sir.
Your third executive session this evening?
Yeah, it was on the final draft.
Yeah.
At least the one I saw.
Yeah. How good about doing this for? Yeah, it was on the version that got distributed.
Yeah.
So at the suggestion of Ms. Ruffles, I move that we approve the agenda with the addition of the executive session.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. There's no further discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. You'll notice that we have guests here from the state to talk to us about our PCB test results. So I'd like our superintendent to introduce our guests, if you would.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Coach. We were happy to have some folks from the state come down today for faculty meeting at 3, but they stayed for the school board meeting. And if you can just raise your hand when I introduce you so folks know. We have Trish Coppolino, the Senior Environmental Program Manager. We have Evan Pendleton here from the Department of Environmental Conservation, the PCB coordinator. We have Cassandra Kinney here, the project manager for Hartford's PCB project. We have Dr. Sarah Owen from the Department of Health, State Toxicologist. And we have Jill Briggs Campbell, Director of Operations from the Agency of Education. We're going to share a presentation and then questions and answers. Well, take it away, Trish.
Thank you for having us here tonight to let you hear about the PCB testing program that the state is initiating and the results from the testing at Hartford High School and the Career and Technology Center. First and foremost, I want to apologize for having to be here to talk to you about this. It's never something that any of us enjoy talking about or have to deal with. So I appreciate the fact that you're here about something that is mostly nothing that a community wants to hear about with their school. So I'm going to get into what PCBs are. They're polychlorinated biphenyls. They are man-made chemicals. In schools, they're used in building materials. In the universe, they're used in multiple different ways. But what we look for here in schools is how they're added to building material to try and keep the material stable over the time frame. So we look at caulkings, at glues, at mastics, fireproofing, and paints. Usually are where we're finding a lot of these PCB products in schools right now. They were manufactured solely by Monsanto in the United States of America. There was no other manufacturer that made these. PCBs were banned by EPA in 1979. And they were banned because of their inability to break down quickly in the environment. They accumulate and they have somehow associated with them. Because of the work and identification of PCBs at Remington High School, the legislature mandated that all schools that were built or renovated before 1980 have PCB testing conducted in them to determine whether or not these existed in indoor air and the rest of the schools that were built or renovated before 1980.
Trish mentioned that PCBs don't break down very quickly in the environment, and they also don't break down very quickly in our body. So once we're exposed to PCBs, those chemicals can stay in our bodies for sometimes a couple of years and sometimes much, much longer. So that's one of the reasons why PCBs can be so harmful to our health, is that they really bioaccumulate in people as well. We know that PCBs can increase our risk of getting certain types of cancer, including melanoma. PCBs can also affect our immune system. They can depress our immune system, which may be one of the reasons they contribute to a person's cancer risk. PCBs can also impact the developing baby. PCBs impact the nervous system and the endocrine and thyroid systems. So that's one of the reasons that we're concerned about staff, but also young children who are in the schools exposed to PCBs, because they can accumulate those and then pass them on to their developing baby. When we started this program in 2021, the health department and DEC worked together to develop a framework for how we interpret data for the indoor air testing that's required. So the first set of numbers you see at the top are the school action levels. We developed these action levels to help us understand when there are sources of PCBs in a room that could be removed, and it helps us prioritize which rooms should receive further attention. There's 3 different levels, and they're different for different age groups, because these levels are developed to minimize our exposure from school, and they take into account our other sources of PCB exposure. And we know that little kids, so the smaller kids, have more chemical exposure per body weight than adults, so they have less room for exposure at school. This is a high school. The action level for this school is 100 nanograms per meter cubed. The levels at the bottom are called immediate action levels, and those are 3 times higher than the action levels. And those help us prioritize when we have spaces where we should reduce exposure. So in the rooms that are above the immediate action level, we recommend that those rooms not be used as a way to prevent further exposure to people, staff, and students.
I'm going to go over the framework of our testing program and how it works for us to get the results that we have. Department of Environmental Conservation contacts with environmental consultants to go to each school that was identified. And they go into each school, and they go into every single space in that school. They go into the closets, bathrooms, hallways, storage rooms, and all of the classroom spaces. And they look at each space and they document all of the potential building materials that exist in those spaces that could potentially have PCBs in them. And so they look at paint color, they look at construction, they look at the heating ventilation system, they look at similar, the renovations, they look at the ceiling type, and they put that all together in a spreadsheet, and they break those up into groups. And they basically say all of these rooms are similar in construction and building materials. We're going to put them in a group together. And so they break the whole school up into different groups. Within each group, DEC asks them to collect 30% of those rooms for an indoor air sample. So if there's 10 rooms in a group, they collect 3 samples. We take that information and we extrapolate it across that entire group to say tested and untested rooms are similar because they have similar building materials. And based on that, we provide recommendations to the school on occupancy. By doing this, it does allow us to balance keeping kids in schools and ensuring that they have health. This is just an image of what one of the air samplers looks like. We get a lot of questions on this. So this is the pump down here, and this pump is set up, this whole stand is set up into one of the spaces that needs to be sampled. The pump here at the bottom will run for 24 hours. And you can see this tube is connected up to this glass tube up here that has a filter inside of it. And so it's pulling air through the filter for 24 hours. PCB is in the air attached to this filter, and then this whole glass tube gets sent off to a laboratory where they analyze the filter to see what concentrations of PCBs exist in it. So this is what we set up in each space that's being tested for PCBs. So the results from the indoor air sampling here ranged from non-detect, that means there were no PCBs detected at the lab, to 1,000 nanograms per meter cubed. Spaces where the immediate action level exceedances were measured, so that would be anything greater than 300. We're in the kitchen, culinary arts kitchen and the adjacent office. Classrooms 139, 141, and 144, as well as the gym storage room and 2 custodial gym spaces. The range of concentrations in those spaces was 350 nanograms per meter cubed to 1,000 nanograms per meter cubed. Spaces in the school that exceeded the school action level, so that's 100 nanograms per meter cubed. For the eastern sections of the first and second floor, the gym and the adjacent areas, and those concentrations range from 100 to 240 nanograms. This is the image that's hard to describe to most people, but I think it helps for you to all see how the groups were set up in the school. So each color section is a separate group that the consultant identified as either similar or not. This is more of an example for you to see rather than for you to fully understand each room and each color. But it's an image for you all to see how the school was separated out, different groups. So the next steps for the school and school districts are to hire an environmental consultant. That's already happened. They're going to be working with Wade Heindel Environmental Management to come back and do the next phase of work that needs to occur here. We met with the school last week to go over the results of the testing and occupancy options that were prepared by the Department of Health. And the school has restricts uses spaces that are above the immediate action level. We're looking at ways to reduce indoor air concentrations to schools that have school action levels. And this decision is supported by the Health Department, Department of Environmental Conservation, and the Agency of Education. This summer, the consultant will be working in short term to try and identify the sources of the PCBs in the spaces that have immediate action level exceedances, as well as looking at ways to potentially reduce indoor air concentrations while we're looking for those sources in an attempt to make sure that they can be used again in September. And this is schematic of what the process looks like moving forward. So we're here, the school has results above our Vermont school action level. So the next step is materials testing. That means the consultant will come back to the school. They will collect samples of the materials that are identified as potentially PCB. So the window caulking, window cleaning, paint, mastics, glues, and any other things that they identified within the spaces that we looked at. This process is not quick. They need to come and collect the samples, send them to a lab. We need to get the results back. We need to evaluate what the results say and determine if additional work. Once we have a good understanding of what the extent of the contamination is and what the building materials are that contain those PCBs, the next phase is to look at different ways to clean up and remediate that contamination. That is also not a quick process because it involves potentially a lot of different materials in the school. Once the alternative is selected, we go to a corrective action plan. That document details in full what will happen, what can happen, how it will happen, how much it will cost. The last two documents I talked about are public documents. We look for public input. This is your school, is not our school, and we need your input on what the best outcome will be for the school moving forward. During this time frame, we still continue conducting indoor air sampling to ensure that we're not having higher concentrations. And once we finish the work, we will conduct indoor air sampling to ensure that it was effective. Here's our contact information. If you have any questions that we can't answer tonight and you want to email us or look at the websites that we put up where there's a lot of information on our program and activities we can look at. We are happy to answer any questions.
My name is Jeff Spiegel. I taught human services in room 141. concern is not only about my health. The concern is that we ran labs for 3 and 4-year-olds. My predecessor, Emily Silver, is not here. She ran that lab school for at least 20 years.
Yeah.
So what do we say to those youngsters who are no longer youngsters, they're probably in their teens, going older now? What do you say to me?
Okay, so you said 140.
141.
Okay, the room that was really high.
Yes.
Yeah, we've definitely been to other schools where there have been people who have been in some of these rooms that have been very high. We often advise people to talk to their healthcare providers, and we also work with people who've been exposed to lots of other contaminants. We encourage them to make sure it's part of their medical record. A lot of the health conditions that are associated with PCB exposure are things that your healthcare provider can screen for if he or she decides that's the right thing. So I think, talking with your healthcare provider is a good first step. It is really upsetting. We should, none of us should be exposed to PCB. There should be in our schools or in our food or in the many places in the environment where they are found. That is something that is hard for us all to accept.
These numbers, were they the numbers that have been, you're looking at those 2 or through staff's been here 30 years for even that, right? So were they stable at that level for all that time, or where were they worse earlier? Do you have any kind of information around that?
We don't have any information. This is, the first sample that we've collected from the school. There haven't been a lot of studies on what concentrations look like when the building was constructed, any building would be constructed versus over time, and what that concentration gradient looks like. So we don't have good science to go back and try to calculate backwards. We can't do that. We don't know what the concentration was of the original material.
But can you know how it usually, how it typically, how that would work without the data specifically for here? Is that
So
they generally worsen, they lessen over time, or?
I can give you my scientific guess, which is the materials were at their highest concentration when the school was built, that they were probably volatilizing at their highest concentration at that point in time. I don't know when that concentration started to decline. I can't, that's the part I can't tell you, and I can't tell you what the original concentration was.
Are children more susceptible to, or do they have a different response to exposure than adults?
In some ways, they can be considered more sensitive. The action levels are lower for the smaller kids because kids always have more exposure per body weight to any chemical in food. So we always think of your exposure as a measuring cup, and we don't want your measuring cup to overflow with exposure from a particular chemical. So for the little kids, maybe half of their measuring cup is full just from their diet. For the adults, only about 1/10 of our measuring cup is full, so we have more space in our cup for PCBs in air, whereas kids have less space. But from the perspective of our PCBs more toxic for little kids, the developing nervous system is a known target of PCBs. There are a lot of studies on neurodevelopments when the baby is inside the person who's carrying the baby. That's a really sensitive time period. Yeah, so it's possible that those people who are exposed as younger kids also have a bit more, could have more impact. There aren't a lot of studies looking at exposure in that specific age group. Most of the studies we have from people are in people who are occupationally exposed.
So, given that, um, will there be any kind of contact with former preschoolers, their families about this? I guess I'll direct that to you.
Have folks done that? They all try to notify either former employees or students.
I know those questions came up at, some other schools that had relatively high levels. I don't recall if schools had a specific communication plan for former students. I think a lot of it is through situations like this, community meetings, that I think the data goes public today, tomorrow. So this is all very new data for the school to receive. So I think having events like this where people find out about it, it might trickle out.
Yeah, I'm happy to do my best. I tried my best to contact, former employees. I can try to contact former students. Make sure it gets out, whether the school board wants to post it somewhere in the Valley News or it is on our website. It could be posted on our Facebook account. Whatever else. Peter. So clearly this is not a good thing, otherwise we wouldn't be spending this time and money and effort keeping track of it. But how do we understand the relative risk we're actually talking about? What are the known health risks? How do they scale? How does the level of exposure in our schools compare to exposure in other sources of the environment? What can we give to people to give guidance? If we merely send out a letter saying, hey, you got exposed to scary bad stuff, they don't know whether to say, well, that's too bad and there's nothing I can do about it, or I start checking out the price of long-term medical care. We really don't have a message at the moment to give anybody. What guidance can you give about what the risk exposure means? And put it in terms relative to other kinds of exposures. So for instance, I grew up in a time in which all gasoline was leaded. How does it compare to that kind of risk? What are the relative risks of other known bad things we've been exposed to?
Yeah, so those are some good questions, and those are all chemicals that we want to minimize our exposure to. I think it's always hard to quantitate an individual's risk. So we could talk about some comparisons, but we're never able to send out something to a person that says, this is your risk.
No, but you can say something about population exposures and what happens to populations. There are statistical correlations and kinds of things that can give some people some guidance.
So the health effects that were on the first, maybe the third slide or so, those are the ones that have, those are very well accepted. So for carcinogens, there are some pretty large scientific bodies that make qualitative determinations on how toxic chemicals are, and PCBs are known to be carcinogens. So we do know that they always increase our risk of cancer. When we think about our other exposures, the reason that we set the immediate action levels at those levels is going back to that measuring cup analogy. When you have around the immediate action level at a school, the risk cup is overflowing just from that exposure. So, from the world of risk assessment, for whatever chemical it is, we want to keep that measuring cup from overflowing. So that is too much. It doesn't necessarily mean that someone will develop a health effect.
I understand that, and I'm not trying to denigrate, I'm really just trying to understand. I know, for instance, that my favorite food, 3/4 of my caloric intake, peanut butter, is actually known to be a carcinogen. How does that, I don't have any kind of relative, what do we give people in guidance? How concerned should they be? And we can't do it obviously on an individual, you got exposed and with your genetics and your health history and everything else, that's not possible. we can say across a population who had exposure, the increase in rate of cancer went from, I don't know, 0.3% to 0.2% or 0.3% to 0.6%. How does that work? What do we have that's meaningful to somebody that, other than that's scary? And that's scary isn't useful.
Yeah, I understand the desire to want to quantitate someone's risk, but unfortunately, we can't ever give someone.
Not even across populations. On average, 1,000 people, 37 are going to come down. Well, before, without this, it would have been 32. There's no way to. We've
There
got to
are
be able to help
certainly
our.
equations and one could look at those and make those conclusions, but they would be uncertain at best. It's nothing that we could ever stand behind and say with any amount of certainty that this number of people will now get cancer. I mean, and I'm sure everyone realizes this, there's so much that goes into whether or not a health outcome happens. I think we all know people who, we know smoking causes lung cancer, but we all know people who might say, well, my grandma lived until she was 90 and smoked a pack a day, never got lung cancer. So trying to put that out into, translating it into relative risk for people is really hard. I think the best thing you can do is notify people that this is an exposure. This is something that is not good for our health. It's something you all are going to be working to address to lower exposure going forward. And we would direct people to have those conversations with their healthcare providers, because those healthcare providers know much more about the individual's background and medical history and might be able to sort of help interpret and help guide some of those conversations.
So I think, it's important that we think in terms of the landscape. The fact that we completed the tech center in 72. So it has been here for 52 years. We need to notify folks of what has occurred. That's mission critical. And the potential exposure. I think those things are, steps, 1, 2, process. Some of the comments that we've heard so far about the technicality as far as the volatility, of the chemical would be on the front end. So those folks that, were here early and spent the longest amount of time had the longest exposure. It's just, that's basic, just what the thing. The next question is, what do we share, with them? We are getting some guidance from you as we're doing our Q&A. So to Peter's point, what have you offered in terms of responses for Q&A for the schools that have already, gone through this process? Because some schools have.
Yeah, and I'm sorry I didn't mention that earlier. We have a template letter that we provided to schools for them to use to provide the results to their community. And I think you guys sent that out. And then for when people have some detailed questions, they can reach out directly to the health department, or to we can talk about some of those finer points or discuss more or to learn more about numbers, and we can have those conversations with those people.
So, I guess, part of what we'll need to do as a district, is look at, our strategy for communications, throughout the district. Because we have a unique situation with this building, we serve 22 communities. 13 high schools, students come here, and that's been the case for that 52 years. So you know, I know I'm getting into the weeds about, you know, the detail, but that's what our schools about. You know, those communities.
So with other schools where the work has occurred over a longer period of time, we provided outreach materials over that time frame for whatever work we're doing or whatever message the school is trying to provide, and we work with our communication staff to help the school craft that information to make sure that you're talking to them in a way that feels most comfortable for you, and we're helping you with the silence behind the message. So we can help you with whatever message you're trying to give out and provide as many community forums that you know would be helpful for you also.
Are there any PCB studies that you could send us that would also provide to the community?
We do have some links to the documents that we use to derive the action level, so we can provide you with that link.
Yeah, great.
What is the benefit of telling our healthcare provider and getting it in the record? Is there, I'm not trying to be flip, I'm just trying to see really what good does that do? How is that gonna help? I don't see how it helps. I don't see any help for us for this. I just feel like it's, oh yeah, you were exposed. Nothing to be done now.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, there's no way we can lower the PCBs in our bodies, so that's a common question we get, is there anything we can do to get the PCBs out, and stopping exposure is the only way. Your healthcare provider could look at the list of symptoms and, you know, for example, melanoma. If it's not something that is in the routine care provided by your healthcare provider, they may say, oh, well, we typically wouldn't screen for melanoma at this time, but we know you have this exposure, so we're gonna be a bit more thorough. So it would still be managing symptoms, but your healthcare provider could help you, work through what are the things we should look out for.
Are there any tests that can be conducted to determine the level of PCBs in your body?
Theoretically, yes. So PCBs are found in our blood. PCBs structurally are a set of 209 chemicals. So they're this core 5-phenyl ring, 2 rings, and then there are anywhere from 1 to 12 chlorines, and those can be assorted in 209 different positions. So when you start talking about blood testing, if you have to pick which of those 209 you're going to test for, all of us have PCBs in our blood. So if you test your blood for PCBs, you will get maybe test for the first 5 or the second 5 or all 209. It would be prohibitively expensive, but knowing the PCBs are in your blood won't tell you how much came from school versus how much came from your diet. And it's not a useful data point such as cholesterol. If you have a cholesterol level, your healthcare provider can look at that number, put you in a perspective and say, oh, here are steps you need to do. And the PCB number is just not valuable.
So basically, you relieve the name test. Is what you're saying.
Not a test that would give you any useful information. The question.
I guess this is for Tom or the school board. And this may have been discussed earlier. I understand that OQS and DBS are both after this date, but is there plans or a reason why not the other buildings in the districts are not or were not tested?
Yeah, so we're looking at all the schools built or renovated before 1980. So we already tested the middle school. The school's all clear. The high school's up next. You could have to look at our big schedule list and see.
Next round.
Yeah, so that one will be coming up. I think that might be the only one.
Yeah, I think that's it.
Against those 3. Yeah, so we've got one left on the docket, which will be White River Elementary
Do
School.
you know when that testing will be done?
I think it's in the next round, it just changed, right?
We had to slow down our testing because we didn't get refunded, during this legislative cycle, so it's won't happen until after 2025.
I have a follow-up question. Would any of that come to light during either one of our larger renovation projects that was formed on that building?
We had a big renovation and that 2015, that point. I don't think, well, we had no indication that, of that. Obviously, asbestos removal.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
There was also a big one done in 93, 94, that school year as well. So I don't know if it was ever brought up at that point, probably not,
No.
because
Didn't really start until 2000, right? That PCBs are even in the weird about being different.
Yeah, I think if PCB testing was done, it would have been done to look at disposal of the PCB material, but not looking at indoor air sampling that we are, good or bad, we are the only state that is testing for PCBs in schools, and we are the only regulatory body that's testing for PCBs in indoor air. The EPA who regulates PCBs also looks at PCBs as building materials primarily, not indoor air, so we are in the forefront of doing this type of work in the way that we're looking for it.
So when you conduct the test, you'll be able to determine the source in each room or the PCBs or not.
We will get to that point. So we started with our PCBs here and are they in the air? And so that's the indoor air sampling piece. So now we have rooms that we know PCBs are in indoor air. And then we go into all of those rooms and we say, this paint or this mastic or this jointing material looks like it could have PCBs based on the type of material. And the consultants will collect that material, we'll send it off to a lab, and then we'll know whether or not it has any. So that's the next piece of work, is identifying the building materials that could have these.
Does that also include equipment like air conditioners and, heat ducts, et cetera,
We look at all of that.
ventilation system? The curiosity to me. I mean, why were those so significantly higher than any of the other schools in this school complex? What is the basis?
Don't know yet, but when we find out.
Can you let me know? I appreciate it.
We'll know, because, you know, until you take that sample, that physical sample, let alone the air, you know, the air is telling us we have a problem. The sample will identify, you know, where it came from. You know, I think some of the reasons why part of the building shows and part of the building doesn't, this is just my thought, being here since '70s and stuff. One way or another. Every time that you treated it, and what I'm referring to as the treatment is a renovation, you're using less contaminated materials. So I think that's that point that you're bringing up, you know, as well. You know, because we have done massive renovations in certain parts of the facility that other parts have not been touched. And there's almost lines that you can follow. And it will show you, you know, a little bit of that mapping.
Were those buildings, those rooms part of the, when you built the tech center, or were those rooms part of the originally in the high school, when the high school was built?
My understanding is they're original. To the
Yes, to the high school, so they were built when the tech
When the tech center was built, for some reason, they were assumed as part of the tech center. Just those were. And, you know, there are like additional resources that was the same vintage, but we renovated those 2015, 16, and they had lower levels. And I'm not a scientist, I leave it to them, but it does show something today. That when you took out, you know, the RRC was a complete renovation, ceiling, floors, walls, light, electrical, heating, air conditioning, stove, fan, and then, they didn't have anything about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, if we proceed down this path, as we should, and we start to remediate, do we have any kind of numbers on how successful remediation actually is? How much that reduces exposures?
So we are embarking on remediation of a lot of Vermont schools right now. So I can't talk specifically to Vermont schools. I can talk specifically to New England schools and work that EPA and other consultants have done. And when you remove the products that are causing the problems, and if you leave any material in place behind, but you encapsulate it, then you have significant reductions to the air.
What if comparable schools or campuses spent to remedy some of these PCBs?
So we're still working through a lot of the Vermont schools right now.
What about New England schools though?
I think when I put costs together in 2020 and 2021 for the legislature, I estimated that it was between, it's school size dependent, right? And volume.
I'm not gonna hold you to a quote or anything, so.
No, it's a huge range. It can be from like $500,000 because it's a small school up to $20 to $30 million. And it depends on the size of the school, the volume of contamination, and what the revenue is. So it's a huge range.
Some of the items that might contain high PCBs might not be huge renovations. Window caulking or floor mastic or, you know, paint. As opposed to other things that are slightly more significant structural demolition.
Be neat if it turned out that the windows were the problem, we want to replace them anyway, because they're so inefficient.
Yes.
Kind of along with Tom's point there. If after the studies come through about what the materials are affected, would, and I'm pretty sure I know what the answer is, but would Jonathan be looped in on maybe raising some of those items higher on the to-do list?
Yeah,
With all of our,
that's
okay.
part of the.
Well,
Part of the equation.
if you recall, the mission of the bond was life safety first. So, you know, that's an easy response. You know, we have to take care of the safety issues first. So that's definitely determined a lot of what we're talking about at this point.
I'm not sure if there's funding left, when originally the legislature passed this. The state was covering some of the costs, but I don't know if there's anything left or what the prognosis is on that, but, there is that out there as well as, I think both the state and, several Vermont schools are suing Monsanto for the cost of, this problem. We're part of that lawsuit. I joined that a year and a half ago, probably. So. I don't know the status of any reimbursement or cover. I mean, the nice thing to.
I get the
to
most
this-
unsatisfying answer. in
Yes.
entirety.
Great.
So, we can talk about what was, where we're at, and then I can also provide a little bit of where we think we're headed. And Trish, please feel free to jump in and be the side of this. So, the legislature set aside $32 million of education fund to support source investigation, mitigation, which is the short-term strategies that you're going to try to do to lower those levels. and then the long-term remediation. They also identified that of that 32 million, 16 million was then further set aside for Burlington High School for the removal of their PCB materials. So that left 2 million, good math with me. We have been using that money. So I think it's important for folks to know that the legislature committed to supporting schools. It's written in that law that there's a commitment to support schools with these costs. And thus far, that has been the case because the funds have remained available. Evan, I'm going to ask you, you probably have the best, most up-to-date number. Yeah, but the funds are being used, is what people say. In addition, the Department of Environmental Conservation has been able to identify some other funds to help support this work. So they're adding their funds to the pot. Long term, we don't know if additional funds will be brought to bear to support this. And we certainly have been advocating for such. But the larger context is that there is a conversation happening around restarting statewide construction aid. I happen to sit on that task force and that working group. And so that work is ongoing, and certainly PCBs in schools and other environmental contaminants are a major part of that conversation. So in an ideal, I said this was the most unsatisfying answer, I'm really committing to this. In an ideal world, if we were moving forward with statewide construction aid, then schools that had PCB contamination, it's already sort of, I think there's a lot of consensus that those schools would have some prioritization or funding to permanently address, but also maybe to think about it in terms of a larger renovation or other construction needs. So you're not looking away at it, but you're actually thinking about your whole facility. You know, as Thompson, this is a facility that serves a lot of different students from a lot of different communities as a regional CTE. You know, what is that long-term? So those are all things that are in active conversation right now. A bill just went through the legislature that basically requires the work of the construction task force to be now put into a legislative working group. I can sit on that, and they're tasked with basically building out what a future state construction program might look like, and then presenting it to the legislature in January. So that's the bigger context, a lot of unknowns, but that's sort of what we're at.
I will just add to that, sorry. Part of the not receiving additional funding from the legislature, DEC went through and prioritized schools that would continue to receive funding through cleanup. And so it was schools that have HACTCs, where you have useful spaces. So Hartford is one of the schools that would be prioritized to continue through to get cleanup funding as it exists, to make sure that we get those spaces put back into use. So good or bad, that helps ensure that there's funding and priorities set aside for some support there.
And Trish, I think that you're pointing to something really important about this program. There's always been a consideration for the needs, the priority for in-person learning wherever it's safe to do so. We're all still dealing with the consequences of COVID, and we understand what it looks like when children are not in school. And so there's always been a real engagement with Department of Environmental Conservation and Department of Health to do whatever we can do to ensure that there's continuity of operations for in-person learning. So we're seeing that in schools across the state. So I think that's important to know, that balance is really sort of foundational to the program, and you see it in action for
We've talked about a lot of work this summer so that we can make sure all we know what are usable and which aren't. So if, for instance, culinary arts the classroom, the getaway dining room and the kitchen aren't usable, or the school kitchen, that we need to locate another kitchen to use to replace that program that we cover. Same with Allied Ed. Cullen is a little more difficult because it's so specialized. But, you know, the AOB and the state is talking about, you know, funding the cluster that leads on, so that's a promise or commitment or
There's
hope.
precedent.
There's precedent for that being covered, so as a backup plan, we're doing that work now to see if there is a commercial kitchen that we can use the program, so the kids don't suffer. But, maybe we can talk a little bit about the path ahead over the next couple of months, but even years.
Right now.
Right now.
Sure. So I'm gonna go, oh no. I was gonna go back to, so I'm just going back to this, so this is the path ahead. Cassie has received the work plan from the consultant already. So we're working through what they're recommending to make sure it will get us where we want to be as soon as we can. So we will be looking at conducting some indoor air sampling in some other spaces that were example, potentially looking at what does it look like if we run the hood in the cafeteria and the kitchen. Does that help with reducing indoor air concentrations versus having it off? So we can make some decisions about the use of the hood next year in the fall. But while this is happening, we'll also be collecting material sampling from the room with the highest concentration so that we can try to identify what the sources are for potential either removal or encapsulation on a quick turnaround, just to see if there are some quick wins that we could potentially have to have those classrooms used again. We have also deployed in multiple schools, activated carbon filters. They have been successful for the most part in removing PCBs from the air. So they basically provide air exchanges in the classrooms. The PCBs are attracted to the activated carbon, and so they adhere to the carbon. And so it's stripping the PCBs from the air, and it kind of dilutes basically the indoor air. There are some drawbacks. They're not quiet, but they do provide some use for the room as well as identify the sources. Long term is, identifying sources and talking about the best ways to mitigate them, whether or not it's removal, encapsulation, or other options that exist. There's purification and chemical extraction, but we're not going to talk about those right now. So we'll stick with the simple ones. We've offered to meet with Tom weekly, bi-weekly, whatever is needed to make sure that we're all on the same page on the path forward and information get out and whatever is necessary. So we have committed ourselves to be available, but Cassie will be really the one pushing this project forward on behalf of this team. She is the project manager and will be holding her consultant accountable for getting work done on time and done right away.
Any other
I have
questions? Yes.
Tell me again about the White River School. When will that be tested?
We had to push back schools, so if it wasn't in queue already, it's not gonna happen until after July 2025.
So we're going to go ahead and put the kids and the staff back in that school without it being tested. Is that what we're saying?
Yeah.
I just want to be sure that's what I'm hearing.
Yes.
That's a little scary to me. Especially because it's an elementary school, and as you said, concentration for these little guys is a lot higher because of their size.
Maybe the way that you prioritize the school, I don't know if that might help. But
Yeah, I mean, we looked at, there's 324 schools in the state that were built or renovated before 1980. We looked at the age of the school construction. We looked at pre-reduced large population. And we looked at construction activities that might occur over the timeframe that we need to do sampling. And so we ranked all the schools based on all of that. I mean, of all of the schools we sampled, which is a lot, 93 of them haven't had any school action level experience. 68% of the schools haven't had any school action level experience. So we don't know if the school has PCBs in the indoor air or not, but at this point in time, we don't have authorization to add more schools into that.
So I have another quick question. I'm sorry, Tom.
No, or I was just thinking, the schools were ranked in order of their construction
Right,
and the amount of renovation. So White River was in that next tier because of the age of the building.
right.
And the number of renovations already had, so it was a lower risk than this facility. The tech center and the high school were much higher level of risk because of the age of the original construction and the renovations that have taken place that weren't extensive.
Right.
Like, for instance, the middle school was tested earlier because of the age of the building, but I think it was probably just before the advent or the use of PCBs, the extension of what this is. Like, they was a very big goal.
And it's what school the only one that has been tested? Of our schools, it's White River the only one that has not been tested
Right, and Queechee and Dothan won't be tested.
because of the,
Structure.
right,
The
exactly,
action.
right.
And because of the extensive renovation at the Wilder School, that wasn't. That was, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the only one left is White River.
So you sent this letter to,
I sent that to high school and tech center staff.
and parents of all the students, because as a employee that worked there, I also had a daughter who went to school in that program, and I also had a grandchild that went to the program. So I don't know how we can tell everybody about this, but not, I mean, I don't wanna, scare everybody, but just to inform them that what we should, what they should do. We should all these people be telling their doctors, like the grandchildren and that.
I went to White River Elementary, I went to HMMS, and I went to Hartford High School, so I mean, yeah, so, I mean, I feel like we should tell the whole community,
Well,
Right,
that's,
that's,
you know.
that's,
I think it's
that's
fine.
the key.
It's best we can get that information out.
We get it out.
The folks now. Sort of like, that's the shot at they're trying to reach out on their light and exposed.
Yes,
Made a reference to free and reduced lunch counts. White River has a very high count of free and reduced lunch. Plus, we're over 100-year-old building. So you think that would go pretty close to the top of the list.
So the highest timeframe for PCB use was late 50s to early 70s. And so we looked at age of construction, so if it was like a 1900 built school, then it's probably a lower priority. And I don't have the priority scale in here, but we did break it down by age of construction also, knowing when the highest use of PCB was.
But it's had many additions, many renovations. Yeah, over the years.
We did our best to try and put schools in the right spot for sampling.
I think it's also important, when the program was built and the prioritization was being done, we didn't have a statewide facilities assessment completed at that time. That was completed in fall of last year. So those nuances and the detail that you have about your buildings weren't necessarily available to the teams that were building that prioritization metric and ranking everything. So, incomplete information, when you're building that, but able to make some progress with that as well.
The information we were given was from the schools. We sent a survey out to all the schools to provide us with the information we needed to write this.
During COVID, we always wanted to look for that, it's in 2021.
So we had to go through and look at every building and every renovation that was done in every single building, and to what extent. So that's what created the prioritization of our building.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I'm asking a lot of questions, but, so, and I may just be reading it not through a scientific lens, but it says that the Vermont school action level is 100 nanograms. Why are some of the rooms that are above the 100 still in the use column? Like the cafeteria, the auditorium?
Yeah, the way that we take all the data and we translate it into part of what you saw, which is a use, not use. And we actually give schools 3 different options depending on how flexible a school could be. So they range from, depending on how the data falls out. For some schools, the lowest risk option isn't feasible for them. The school action levels are a way to prioritize which rooms have sources that can be removed. Because in an ideal world, there are no PCBs in our indoor air, so PCBs really should be as low as possible, but it's not feasible to say every PCB that's detected has to be removed. So we balance that. So those school action levels are sort of that balance point of, you think this is a source that can be removed. Where we really start looking at not using rooms is one, when they're above the immediate action level. And in another way, if a use has more than half of the rooms over the school action level, in some of those occupancy scenarios, we suggest not using those. So using a room over the action level is allowed. And, as Jill said, we focus on lowering exposure in the highest rooms while still keeping the school open. So it's also not feasible to say PCBs were detected, every school is going to close because of PCB. So we're balancing keeping schools open, functioning, and really targeting those highest risk rooms.
I would add in that a lot of what we had to do together with health and is since DEC is a regulatory program, we needed this red line number to tell us when we were over standard and we needed to take action. Sarah said to look for the source, to remove the source, but it doesn't mean that you can expose it to that.
So,
It takes a week to test?
It all depends on what we're testing. The sample for indoor air runs for 24 hours. And then the labs, we can sometimes rush sample results 48 to 72 hours sometimes, but on average, it's 2 to 3 weeks before we get indoor air results back.
So I'm just curious about what's keeping, say, the testing for the White River schools and money, resources. I mean, what's keeping it a year? We know that finding some problems, what's holding up just testing everybody?
Money and resources.
And that money's not connected to all the money that you were talking about.
No, it isn't, and it is connected. Ultimately, we had to make a calculation of how many schools are left, what's the percentage of those schools that might need something to happen, and what's that cost that it might cost. And when you look at that cost, it is more than what we have available, and so the legislature asked us to look at how to triage this.
And so if these folks wanted to advocate for themselves and trying to find the money for the resource, who would they be asking to fund it?
Your legislature.
So we can pay a company to come in and test the White River School, and that's hopefully we get reimbursed. Is that possible?
That feels risky.
Yeah.
It's defined in statute, literally spelled out in statute, what we are able to reimburse and the process by which that happens. So I would love to say to you, yes, but we're constrained by literally what's
I would say,
law.
if you went against Monsanto, you could get reimbursed for it. It would be safer bet that way than Monsanto. I would also say though that if you sampled, hired a consultant and sampled it, then you have students, then you would get put into the program. And we would start working with you from there. I don't think we can say no to you, but we have been told to stop it.
About how much, does anybody know about how much it would cost to hire a firm to do our own testing on Waverly School?
So from the inventory to the sampling, it would probably be between $60,000 to $70,000. That's all right, Evan?
Yeah, it depends on how many classrooms.
Oh, 60 to 70.
Okay, well, thank you. For being here, and thanks for the support, to our team as far as getting the information out and working with them as we move forward. So that's what we all, us is doing.
Thank you for coming all this way, talking to us and staying this late.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For your interest and Tom, your team has been incredibly responsive, so thank you for that. I think that's important for folks to know is that the team and the school is really responsive, immediately, that, thank you.
So thank you.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
See ya. On the way out. That's the big question. Can you find your way out?
Oh, I do. Our fearless leader.
Thank you. Next Thursday to the conference.
Ironically, also. I will see you then.
So, Jill?
Yeah, I don't.
Yeah.
Stop.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm here to support. Yeah. Yeah, I love going to that. Yeah, so, he's already been in touch. We're talking about, what does this process look like? At this point, you all get to actually be the first school who does not have to submit for reimbursement and hire your own consultant. DEC is managing that, and so it's passing to the state like what the consultant, which I think some of that. burden for them. At the point where you actually get to the corrective action, and that sort of thing, then all of the money to that. So we're in emergency. See you at the next meeting. Yeah, that's right. I'm here on next Thursday for the school facilities conference, so.
We host a school facilities conference.
I mean, literally Trish and I were here,
I don't even know how many months.
2 years ago presenting on PCBs. The irony is not lost on the point. Thank you all for.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Jill.
Yeah, it's good to see you again.
Okay. Great. City needs, bond steering committee update.
Yeah, Sarah wasn't able to be here tonight, but she asked me to update folks, and I guess, we had a first meeting last week. Which was like organizational and just getting to know everybody on the committee. It's a pretty large committee, so, we are gonna be rather formal in our procedures. So, Sarah is the, chair, and we elected Clayton Berry to be the vice chair, Jeanette Potter who is the SAP in the middle school, is the secretary. I just want the board know and the community to know who else is on the committee. Katie Sutton, who is the director of curriculum. Erin Fallon's a parent from, well, she's from Queechee, but she has kids in every school. Scott Houseworth from the rec department, the town rec department. Jeff Marino is the athletic director. And then Jade Bazina, Doug Heavyside from the school board, and Jonathan Garthwaite are all advisory members of the committee. So we have 3 more meetings planned before the school board retreat on the 15th, because our goal is to have a draft RFP to you on that date for you to authorize us to send it out. Start recruiting firms for our studies on enrollment and catchment. That's really the update. So we're trying to really move quickly to have it ready for you to approve and get out. HCOREI charter change. This was on the agenda for the last meeting, but we hadn't warned it well, so we agreed to put it on this agenda. They are looking to change the membership a little to make sure they have a quorum, make it a little easier for them to have a quorum. I think I included that in your packet. Yeah.
Yes.
The existing charge, includes this for the advice for the membership. The committee will be constituted of 11 members to include 2 select board members, 2 school board members, 5 community members, and 2 Hartford High School student liaisons. The new revision proposes to have 7 members to include 1 select board member, 1 school board member, 4 community members, and 1 student from Hartford High School. That is what they would like us to consider.
What are the reasons that proponents want to do this? I will speak for Deacon.
My understanding, they have trouble
Pardon
getting, they have trouble getting. a
We
quorum.
have trouble getting informed.
That's why.
Yes,
So they're kind of halving everything.
yeah. Exactly,
Yeah.
that's exactly what's going on.
I'd like to move that we approve the proposed revision of the HCOREI charter as requested.
Do we have a second?
Can I second? I'm a voting member of this.
No, it's a board.
It's okay, all right, I second it.
You're our liaison,
There you go.
you know, being that you're the voting liaison, you know, it doesn't matter to this.
Yeah.
Context.
Okay.
So, any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
I,
Opposed? So moved.
Great, thank you. The next item was the town school committee. It seems that they only have 2 members. A few members have moved out of town or their term is up. So they are looking for a new member from the select board and a new member from the school board. So that means, you know, usually it would be you authorizing me to post this in the Valley News and a listserv and on our website that we're looking for a school representative to the town school meeting committee. I didn't mean to make it sound like one of you had to. Yeah, good. Sorry about the committee.
So I would move that we authorize the superintendent to attempt to find somebody who would be willing to represent the school's interests on the town school.
second. Sorry, let's read it. Sorry.
So we have a motion and a second. To empower the superintendent to advertise for the members for the town school meeting committee. All in favor?
Aye. Do we need to wait for Garrett to step back in?
We can hold the vote open.
Okay.
So we have 4 in favor. And we'll wait for Garrett to come back and we can cast his votes. Sorry. There's a motion on the floor to empower the superintendent to advertise for the additional members to the town school town meeting committee. And we have 4 in favor and now we have unanimous. Thank you. Right. Retreat agenda planning.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure, since this is our last meeting till the retreat, what you needed from me for the retreat. The last meeting, we talked about, focusing on the superintendent search. And, I just want to know if you need me to do anything to help you prepare for that. You need me to contact anyone or arrange anything at all. I mean, or you can think about it and let me know between now and then, but I just don't want to waste time if
Why don't you ask us in a couple, 2 weeks, just so we have time to
all right.
think about it. My immediate thought is, I would not mind having representation, the company that we had hired originally to assist us with that. And maybe we could have somebody from the School Boards Association. Because, so that who could kind of give us some advice of a general nature and sort of stimulate the conversation.
I just know everyone gets so busy in the summer, I wanted to get a head start if you were looking for,
Right.
the folks.
Those are what I can think of. I'll give everybody else a chance to think further and more deeply on it. My reflexive response.
Okay, well, that's what I needed to know. I just don't want you to get there and go, oh, we should have had, or we
Yeah.
needed.
Right.
I don't want to waste your time.
Any other topical pieces for that? Think about it, because we do have time, to add to the agenda, to formalize it, I should say. Especially if we don't have to do special invitations.
We also need to be thinking not necessarily about this, about the retreat, but it could be. There's some new laws fixing to go into effect about what school boards have to get done. And I think we need to have some time to talk about that and digest it, because there is quite a bit actually. Okay.
Well, I think,
Some of it's gonna take, well, some of it doesn't go into effect until July 25.
Right.
But also know that there's a lot there that,
but you have to be aware. And then the question becomes, I think, time has to be taken to look at that schedule. And,
Right.
we will have, let's say, any number of specialists in those areas,
Right.
that can assist us with each of the topics. But I think planning that this is what is passed, this is what's been signed, and this is what we need to do about it.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree
And
with you.
that's, you know, and that's in essence what.
It's not gonna, but it's still things that are gonna take us more than 2 meetings.
Right.
To get
Well, that's
where
where
we need to be.
that's
I just wanna
why
make sure that,
they need to be on, they need to be on the table
yes,
so that we schedule them into our work.
we'll get that, yeah, yeah. Okay, just wanted to bring that up.
Yeah. So. Where, end of the year, that's still coming.
We have, the middle school graduation tomorrow night, 13th at 6 o'clock, if you're interested in attending. We're hoping that will be outside. Weather looks okay for that. We're worried about the weather for Friday night, but it is Friday night at 7 o'clock. Haven't decided yet whether it'll be inside or outside, but it does look like rain, so I'm pretty cool.
It's always a coin.
It is.
Yeah,
Have gone through so many of those. Oh, it's Friday, it's coming, oh no. But, you know, it's just, so many people come from so far, you
right,
know, families and
Yeah.
things of that sort. Where you're just concerned for them. So that's, you know, the big piece. You know, the kids are kind of funny about it. They say, it's our graduation, we'll do what we want. Because there was one class that did that. It was in the rain. I remember the ponchos and all that.
Go over too well.
No, I actually, you know, it was kind of interesting. I think the kids enjoyed it. I don't know what the families and everybody else thought about it, but I know one grandfather that wasn't super charged up about it. Okay. Summer hiring authorization is next.
Usually every year at this time, since we don't, board doesn't meet for a month, you give me authorization to hire professional staff, that come up. So,
I thought we
hopefully you'll
were,
consider that again.
No, not for the summer.
Can't done it for some period of time, they were one of the
I
things.
thought it was fairly recently that we
Yeah,
getting the authorization.
I remember it was for the summer, or it was for break period where we were.
I mean, we can just do it.
Yeah,
Yeah, for the summer, it's something I've seen done in every district I've been in.
Well, we've done it every year.
yes,
You
yeah.
know.
No, it's doing it, it's not me.
Yeah, no, I don't think I've done it yet for this summer. Yeah, the years fly by, right?
They pile up. Move that we authorize the superintendent to hire appropriately and needed staff for the district over the course of the summer.
Second,
So it was meandering, but I got there.
So we have a motion and a second to approve the summer authorization of hiring the superintendent. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? So moved.
Thank you.
That's the block. Committee reports.
DR.
Yeah, Tom, could you put the newsletter up there, please? well, Tom, for pulling that up there. Doug and I have talked a lot about communication and transparency, getting information out there to the masses, to all the taxpayers. So I created a free constant contact account and just created a mock newsletter. That way we could take a gander.
Well, I like the new development we've got.
It's not gonna hit.
That new bridge is real.
Yeah, that's all right.
Cost wise,
Right?
it's a mere $270 a month for 10,000.
Whoa.
So I think we'll cover.
Actually, I'm less impressed by the bridge as it is, but I'm really impressed by the canal that somebody done.
There we go. So you guys can tell this is a test. So I did put quarterly newsletter on here, but I would like to push again that when we roll it out, it would be monthly. I think that the effort would be worth it. So in this test newsletter, I mean, all the buttons are live. They link out to resources kind of across our Hartford School District site. That first section that you saw up there, if you could go back up, Tom, real quick, towards the top. So that first section, again, it's all lore, ipsum, and kind of fake text. But the idea would be, we can have as many sections as we want to. You know, that first part would be a bond budget spending update. I think that's what a lot of taxpayers are very interested in. There could be a section as well that that's kind of a superintendent address to the people, if you will. And then most importantly, school news. So by school. So there could be a news section for, you know, HHS, for middle school, tech center, all the elementary schools, Wilder School, and all the way down to pre-K. You'll notice that there's a button on each section, kind of at the bottom of each section, that links out to that specific school's webpage. So I'm happy to be the one that sends this out until we have a PR firm that will do it. You know, this took me maybe like 3 hours to put together, and what I would really need to make it happen are images. I need an email list, so the idea would be this would go out to staff, this would go out to parents, and this would go out to taxpayers. I know that the taxpayer emails might be something that we don't have, but I think this could be an opportunity to kind of cultivate that email list. That's kind of the goal of it as well.
Yeah, both the town and the school, John and I have talked about how to do that, so.
And I think
word that too.
you know, we could start with word of mouth. So I mean, you send it out to staff, you send it out to parents. People go, oh, hey, you got a newsletter about, you know, the Hartford School District, about everything that's going on. How'd you get that? They could send a link and subscribe. So you know what?
Well, you can utilize the listserv, you know, as a starting jumping off point.
Absolutely.
For your community.
We could print this out and it could be posted at all the libraries. I'm happy to talk to the town clerk if we need to kind of get it out there a little bit. So the other thing, so I would need, on a fairly regular basis, again, until we have a PR firm that would take over, which doesn't hurt my feelings when they would want to take over. But I would need at least, you know, one news item from each school once a month. You know, whatever that news item may be, I think it'd be really important to have, you know, sporting events, scores, triumphs, all those types of things. In terms of cost, so again, I used Constant Contact. If we have a tool that we're not aware of, that the school already pays for or has access to, I'm happy to build a newsletter in that tool. But to be able to send out to a max of 10,000 recipients, it would be $275 per month. And maybe we get a discount because we're a school district. So, but I think that that's worth it to be able to get information out there to everybody. So that's kind of the theme I've been noticing, is that everybody wants to know. And again, I'll reiterate, I get a newsletter from OQS, from Amelia, pretty regularly. But again, as a parent, I don't know what's going on with the other schools.
Yeah, some of it could be just linking those newsletters they already do.
Exactly. So
Getting them.
yeah, and that's kind of where we're going, that everything can kind of link out. We have a ton of information out there.
Yeah.
But everyone already does that, so consolidating them, have one access point. Wonderful.
Absolutely. So I mean,
You know, that,
a highlight from that can go on here. We can link it out to those newsletters so everyone has access to it.
and that always makes best sense, you know. You know, that metaphor of one-stop shopping, you know, people like to be able to go, you know, and not have to hunt, you know. Okay, I wonder what they're doing over here, but to have the district in front of you and be able to go, hey, you know, somebody said they're doing this, or, you know, you just click, you know, and their page opens up. So.
Yep. Yes, I mean, you know, again, the buttons are live, so Tom, if you click on the new school calendar, it goes right to the school calendar. You know, it just opens it up in another tab. So people can check it out, pop back onto the newsletter. Any of those buttons actually go somewhere. And actually, if you do go back to the newsletter, Tom, and scroll down, have it closer to the bottom. So again, the school sections. Spot we could put in the activities, you know, things such as graduation, first day of school, holidays, football games, any of those types of things.
School board meetings.
School board meetings, you know, so we could have a pretty big laundry list of these things. And if you scroll down to the next section, I create, all those links are actually linked to spaces on our website and websites. So, you know, parent resources. I already forgot all the other links, but you know, our programs, us, the school board, the admin staff, curriculum overview. We can add as many links as we want to, but I figured this might be a good start to get it in front of people. Even people that don't have kids, but people that pay taxes, they want to know some of this stuff.
Yeah, no, good, great.
So I'm happy to add sections, take away things, rearrange it. You know, any and all feedback is welcome. Doesn't hurt my feelings if somebody tells me they hate it, it's fine. Yeah,
I love it.
thanks.
Great job. Consolidation.
Yeah, good. You know, maybe, you know, I won't take up more time with this, but you know, I just had a thought about, you know, any one of us who's working on a, you know, an internship or a project that could do that field work too. Because I was on the phone with like the Bugbee Center, yesterday, and to be able to reach out to that nucleus of folks, you know, in town, you know, that, you know, I forget how many people, you know, go there a day. But they have events, I mean, like once a week, and we might be able to bring the newsletter to, as a presentation, you know, as a presentation piece. Just to let them know this is available now. You know?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
You
then.
might be able to just send one to the executive director of, you know, the aid and
Yeah.
the senior center,
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I want to build out the contact list to be able to send this to anybody who wants to receive it.
You know, just thinking in terms of what we went through, you know, with the bond budget, you know, if people are more informed, you know, we have a way to get the information out.
well, you're especially gonna need it when you get to the superintendent search activities, where you want community input, community to come out, see, you know, meet new superintendent candidates and vote or give their input or whatever you're gonna do. That's usually a high interest thing.
Yeah.
I was hired, there was, I don't know, it was probably 90 to 100 people at forum all night. See the candidates.
And Doug had the idea of talking to the select board to see if, you know, they wanted to provide any updates that could go out in the newsletter as well. I don't think the select board has a newsletter. Not saying they need one necessarily, but maybe it would help. But yeah, I'm happy to collaborate with whoever wants to contribute and kind of provide any information that's relevant to our district that people be interested. We're up.
Tom, does he need to talk to somebody in your IT department to make sure that this is
Yeah, I'll have to talk to some.
And that's my world, so I'm happy to talk to anybody that figure out what the best approach to send it out is.
Yeah.
Like I said, if it has to be on a different platform, that's fine. But, yeah,
And then I guess we need to talk to Jake about making how we, whatever it is, we have to pay $275.
Yeah, no, I can deal with that.
they probably
If
offer a
that's-
nonprofit or school discount too, I would assume.
They do.
I know they offer a nonprofit discount, but I would assume they offer a school discount.
It's an educational part of it. It's all it's supposed to be. But anyways, the big thing is you might want to just, either you could, Tom, or you could, Garrett, just ask Jake, if he's aware of any existing, platforms that we're already paying for, that, an expansion to, let's say, from the group level to a premier level might even be less than what it's gonna cost us if we already have a platform.
I'll check.
Yeah, no, like I said, I'm happy to use that platform as long as I can kind of achieve the same.
Yeah.
Same load, same type of thing, absolutely. So,
And I think our goal is to try to get one out right around the school start.
yeah, put one together and get one out before school starts. I would like to say though, I would like it to be a monthly newsletter. But if it's gonna be monthly, then I want it to be consistent.
Yeah.
Well, I don't wanna,
Yeah.
overpromise
And I
and
would love
underdeliver.
it to be monthly too, but I want to be aware of all the things that are already going on, so it might be nice to start, say, quarterly. See how it goes for a quarter or two, and then how easy is it? I think it could easily be monthly.
My only concern about quarterly is that then it's a lot more information to try and get in there. Might be harder for people to find things and they may just be overwhelmed with information, so.
I mean, with all the administrative Monday and Tuesday, so I'll put it on the agenda.
And it doesn't, I'm all about automation and making things easy, so
Yeah.
if admins are already putting out newsletters to their staff and cohorts and parents, I could use some of that.
Yeah.
Copy paste, link it out.
Might be no, I have to do that at all. If I get all those newsletters, I can just create a link and plug them in.
Yep. So we could absolutely do something like that.
Yeah. All right, I'll be in touch with you.
Sounds great. Cool.
What other committees met out? I told you about the school facilities bond and policy, and then that we're gonna meet a couple times this summer and get a job done. HCC or HCOREI.
Well, HCOREI, the main thing was to get that, the charge to, or the numbers of members on the board changed. So it makes it easier for us to get the forum so we can do our work. Couple of things, the picnic is next week, it's Wednesday, from 5 until 8. And there are a lot of good vendors have already come out, I mean, not vendors, but people like HCC and some others that I know some of these ladies have helped with too. Russell swears that he will not come back over here and sit in the jump tank, the dump tank, yeah. But we're still working on him to do that, because he was so good at it last year. And the Rotary Club will do the hot dogs again, and ice cream and watermelon, that kind of stuff. For VSBA, I was in a meeting with them all day today. We've got a lot going on. We're trying to set our work plan. Also, I sent to the board the weekly update newsletter thing. I want to encourage the board members of our board and anyone out in the audience, both physically here or up on through the computer, to by Friday contact your local representatives And if you need to find out who that is, just let me know and I will send you all of their contact information. Right,
Right.
Kevin? He's going over there smiling quietly. But what we're trying to encourage is, because of the governor's veto on H887, which is the yield bill. If we don't have one set for next year, we're gonna have a deficit of $82 million. And we're not gonna have enough money to even meet the educational needs, education department, whatever you wanna call them. I'm sorry, I'm really tired. Anyway, I've sent it already to the members of the board. I really encourage you. It doesn't take much. You can send an email, you can give a call. You can probably, I don't know. People are gonna be there tomorrow and Friday. Yeah, because Friday's gonna be the vote. For this, yeah, no?
Next week.
Oh, I was told that it's this Friday. Well, either way, contact your representative.
No, that was the deadline to get, I think the suggested deadline to get the word out.
Oh, okay, I misunderstood what.
Because the veto session is Monday and Tuesday.
Okay.
17, 18.
Okay, I just misunderstood what Martin said today.
But I think that's what they.
I really encourage you to contact the representatives, okay? And again, if somebody needs it, just contact me and I will give you the contact information. And I could also give you, suggested verbiage to use if you need that, okay? It's really important that we get this taken care of, or we're gonna be really hurting.
At least in our district.
Yes.
I kind of know where our votes are, both on the Senate side and the House side, so. Not to say to not do that, because it's always good to mobilize, but, I'm hoping that those districts that are really critical to overriding the veto.
Yeah.
Come through.
Yeah.
Part of the Georgia, because we already did it. So.
That's all I got.
Right. I was gonna wait for the public comment section to raise this question, but given just introduced the subject, given the consequences, or the consequences I can figure out of this, the bill that was passed that set the yield rates and everything else, having been vetoed by the governor, means that automatic statutory language gets inserted for those numbers, and the statutory language is going to grossly underfund the budget that we need in the state of Vermont to pay for the collective school budgets of all the different districts in the state, driving the school fund into deficit. That deficit is, as you said, very, very large.
82 million.
And the amount of money that exists to deal with unexpected problems is nowhere near big enough to address it. The question I have is, when the fund goes negative, does that mean school districts stop spending? Or that we start writing checks where there's not money in the bank and the state has to figure out how to come up with the money?
It would be up to the state. So because that fund, if budget's passed, there are statutory requirements for them to pay those budgets.
So they're gonna have to figure out how they're going to pay it.
And what that means in a lot of cases is something is gonna have to be.
Right, so when I'm looking at that, then what this does is create a very large hole in the state budget, which appears to my perhaps biased eyes as deliberate mismanagement to make the problem of school funding even worse. Because, yeah, it's nice to pay less this year, but we're gonna rack up all those bills for everything we got approved. And it's going to have to be paid, and that means next year, state is gonna have to find that money anyway, on top of everything else we do.
Because if you have to borrow anything in order to cover your expenses, because it isn't there in the ensuing year, that would add on to the cost of the budget, and it could feasibly drive tax rates even higher than there.
No scare tactics, but here's a couple other numbers. If there's no yield bill enacted for fiscal year 24 to 25, the average bill for non-homestead property taxpayers is estimated to increase by 30%. The average bill for homestead property taxpayers is estimated to increase by 13%, and the average bill for income sensitized property taxpayers is estimated to decrease by 11%. So it will affect everyone, not just our budget. Yeah, Tom's eyebrows are going up, yeah.
So we will, as taxpayers, get a short-term reprieve, but it's sort of like spending your retirement funds to have a good time right now and then,
Yeah.
paying later.
Yeah. That's all I got.
Well, thank you. I want to make sure I understood what the consequences, it wasn't quite clear how the massive deficit would affect our spending. So at least, schools would function for a little longer, but.
Yeah.
At what cost?
Exactly. All right. So that brings us to public comments.
Yay. I'm Jen Smith in Minneapolis. I have a kid in the middle school and the high school, and there's no secrets that both schools have had their share of problems this year. But that's not what I want to talk about. I'm also a staff member at the White River School, and today we had our field day. And I'm sure it took a lot of collaboration of so many things, people that I probably never have met, that I've never have seen behind the scenes. But we had kids that couldn't even sit in a classroom at the beginning of the year, be able to participate with their class in field day at the end of the year. We had kids extend their comfort zones to try things they've never tried before. We had teachers climbing structures to go through obstacle courses with kids that were too scared to do it by themselves, and by the end, they were doing it alone. We had teachers going down inflatable water slides or running through the fire department hoses. And I say this because with so much wrong that our district has been weighed down with this year of things that are sometimes not within our control, there was so much right today. None of this would have been possible without our staff doing so many things right today. None of it would have been possible without our community members and parents stepping in and making snow cones or running various stations. So they have done so much right today, and never mind the administration or the direction of our principal or office help or anything. The best part was just the table in front of the school with Band-Aids on it, because that fix absolutely everything, which was the most genius move ever. But in a world that was so wrong, with so many wrong things this year, we did something right. Because today never would have happened without all of it all year long. So that's it. It's just great to be a part of it.
I would like to add to Jen, because it's not been posted because there's got kids' faces, and I wasn't quite sure that that was okay to post, but it should be okay to post somehow, because it was way too funny. Jen Jen worked for me for how many years? 14?
16.
16 years. Yes. And she is like the most outstanding person to work with children that you've ever seen in your entire life. So what was it, Monday? That the rainbow came through? So Jen likes to do fun things with the kids. And so Monday, before school started, while the kids are coming into the school grounds, Jen is in a unicorn costume that's been blown up with air. And the kids don't know who's in that costume. And they were happy, running up and giving the unicorn hugs and kisses. And I thought, what a great way to start the school day and a Monday.
I've got
For
it.
these. You did, oh, I know the dinosaur too. I wasn't gonna mention the dinosaur, but we will now. But I thought, these kids, you know how sometimes kids can come to start the day, especially a week, if they've had a bad weekend already, and they're still, they can't switch over and just say, I'm gonna have a good day, I'm gonna have a good day. Jen made so many of those kids happy, and I'm sure a few teachers laughed, and they had a great time. Another day, Jen also has another costume as the dinosaur. And when it was Anne's birthday, or it was after your birthday, was it? Birthday. So she's in her dinosaur costume in the kindergarten room, and Anne, I think this is how it happened, and Anne comes in and Jen is dancing around in her costume and singing belated birthday songs, and and the kid, Anne loved it. Made your day, didn't it? See? So those little things that are happening, and I agree with Jen, there are things that are happening that are good in our school. It's not all the bad stuff. So I appreciate your sharing that, because that's important for people to hear too. And thank you for doing what you do, you and you. And you too, but you're not in the school system, but that's okay, you support them. So thank you.
That's a hot newsletter item.
There you go, yeah, we've got pictures.
Dinosaur skating in school.
It was great.
Unicorns roaming hallways.
It was great.
You know, quite a headline, you know?
I've never seen it, I've heard about it.
So it must be a figment of someone. Yeah, we need that.
Yes, we do.
We definitely need that. So thank you so much. If there's no further public comment,
Couple of ones.
yes.
We have, Katie Desitel, is gonna be a counselor at the Wilder School. And Karen Broderick, special ed teacher at the Regional Resource Center. No resignation.
Anything on the minutes?
Is there a reason, the May 22nd minutes weren't included?
They were, yeah, the first agenda was wrong, that's why I corrected it, so,
Okay.
yeah, May 27th. Sorry about that, I did put them in the packet, and then I realized I left the May 8th meeting on the first agenda, that's why I fixed it. Then I left off the executive session. So, we're all tired.
Yes. All right, so not hearing any amendments or anything else, I move that we approve the consent agenda, welcoming those who are coming.
Second. So we have a motion and a second to accept the consent agenda. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? So moved.
All right, I would like to move that the board finds that there is a need for a executive session to discuss the evaluation of a public employee pursuant to one VSA 313A3, and that we go into said executive session.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? So moved. So thank you all.